All right, how's everyone doing? Let's hear a round of applause for the NFT panel we just had. One more, big loud one. We are about to kick off some of the most cutting edge thinking about governance, government, and innovation. And so we have some true luminaries, some true, I would say, bright minds in big organizations like government. The Federal Reserve's in the house. And I won't spoil too much. I will just hand it over to Jeff, take it from here, and introduce this incredible panel. Before we start, a big round of applause for this panel. We always like to let everybody out there know that the real action is in here.
Hi, my name's Jeff Benson. I'm a senior editor at Decrypt, and I'm going to let the three panelists introduce themselves. Go ahead,
I guess I'm up first. Hi, I'm Robin Nunn. First of all, thank you, ETH Denver 2022, for having us and inviting us. Thanks to my co-panelist and moderator for working with us on this panel. I'm really excited about today. My name is Robin Nunn. I'm a partner at a law firm called Morgan Lewis. I am co-head of the banking industry group, as well as an active member of the sort of digital working group that's there at the firm. Prior to being in private practice, I was in-house at 2 financial institutions. I'm particularly passionate about the underserved and unbanked communities. I've spent my entire career working on financial inclusion and access to credit, so I'm particularly excited about this panel and what we're about to talk about because I do believe that the innovative in government and governance is important and crucial, and we're at a critical, pivotal point right now.
Rachel?
Hi, my name is Rachel Epstein. Thank you to the conference organizers, ETH Denver, Decrypt, Jeff, my great co-panelists. It's great to be here. I started out in this weird, amazing industry about 5-6 years ago, research assistant on a book called Blockchain and the Law with Aaron Wright, then was at Consensus for a little less than 2 years, in-house counsel there. From there I went to Hedera Hashgraph, got more of experience from a layer 1 perspective, in-house counsel there, doing a lot of government affairs and regulatory work. And then as of a few weeks ago, moved into IO Global, working with Cardano and other products that we're building, and really trying to better understand how we can work with government to help them innovate and do some really cool things. So it's great to be here, and yeah, thanks.
Sunayna?
Hey everyone, my name is Sunayna. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at the Federal Reserve. I'm delighted to be here. I know at least I'm not nearly cool enough to follow a panel on NFTs, but I'll do my best. Really glad that ETH Denver saw value in having somebody from the Fed to share our perspectives on this ecosystem. A little bit, before I joined the Fed in 2021, which definitely was not on my bingo card. When I first got the call from the recruiter, actually, I thought it was a prank that one of my crypto friends were pulling on me, because I was like, wait, the Fed, me? I don't think so. I went down the crypto rabbit hole, starting with the, Bitcoin in 2010, and have kind of been investing, working, and just personally learning in the fintech and crypto ecosystem. Right before the Fed, I led digital assets and DeFi at TD Ameritrade, both in North America and in Asia. So yeah, trying to bring a little bit of the DeFi, crypto, and fintech culture into the Fed.
So, yeah. So in short, everyone here knows their shit. And I'm going to start with Sunayna, because we hear central bank and we think central bank, decentralization, innovation, government. That seems like kind of an oxymoron. So is it?
Well, interesting you say that, Jeff. As I said, when I first got the call and I got over the fact that it was not a prank, it was an actual recruiter I was talking to, then my very first question was, wait, central banking, innovation, that's an oxymoron, right? What do you need me to do anyways? But I will say I am pleasantly surprised in terms of the target-rich opportunity that it is for disruptors and innovators when you get into the Fed. The one thing I will say that's definitely been an aha for me is how not centralized the central bank is. The way I explained it to my Canadian parents is joining the Fed has been akin to entering a new solar system, because you're not just part of one planet. There's, the 12 reserve banks and the board of governors in DC, the 13 entities that are required to operate independently, right? And they all have their own sense of ethos and gravity and language, and yet they all also have to work interdependently, to advance the mission of the Fed. So it's this really interesting, I joke, I'm like, if I could go back and tell my DeFi community, I guess I am now, how decentralized the central bank is, that you would all get a kick out of it. In terms of my mandate, which is the innovation officer for the entire franchise, the system, it's really twofold. One is, recognizing the volume, velocity, and variety of new technologies that are coming at us and are pretty much disrupting, every category, every institution of every size. How do we, as the Federal Reserve, harness the power of these technologies to level up the work that we do internally, but also the products and services that we build that are then consumed by the external ecosystem? The other component of my role, which I am just building as I go, because they kind of gave me we know we need your role, go figure out what you want it to be, so I'm making the most of it. But the second part of my role, which is very external facing, is really around education and community engagement. So really finding ways to engage with the fintech, the crypto, and general industry, and creating that venue for dialogue and explore opportunities for collaboration. Very quick example, last week I hosted a series of meetups exclusively with Web3 and DeFi founders and builders, and invited a lot of my Fed colleagues to really understand what's happening in this ecosystem, both in terms of the use cases and the technologies and what we could learn. And I think those dialogues are really important, which then helps us figure out how we can collaborate together.
So, Robin, the other day I was, moseying along, and I came across this panel that was very, very popular, and everybody was mobbing you because they wanted to know all about law and regulation and crypto. And so I'm wondering, Sunayna's talking about meetups and kind of reaching out to the projects. From your perspective, where are the disconnects between innovators and government, and what sort of roadblocks can we help remove?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Sunayna. I really feel like she set forth a lot of really good examples of what the government is doing right now in terms of taking a look at innovation. I guess I have to now be the negative Nelly to talk about what is, where the opportunities, so to speak, are. As you all know, the financial sector is highly regulated. There's a lot of concerns about stability, concerns about consumer protection, things like that. So there are a lot of eyes on this. And as also we have a new administration in the government, and we have a number of vacancies in our financial regulators. So there are vacancies with the FDIC governors, there are vacancies with the Federal Reserve, there are vacancies at the SEC, soon to be. There are vacancies right now, some appointments for the CFTC. All of these sort of alphabet soup of regulators that I've just named really control the financial sector and make important decisions with respect to new rules, new regulations, new guidelines. There is a lot of work being done by the government in this space, a lot of good work, but there's still a lot of room because our US system is set up around regulating particular types of entities, more traditional entities like banks, like broker-dealers, like things like that. And they have certain agencies who regulate those agencies. So what we're struggling with right now is sort of taking a look at digital assets, such as stable coins or cryptocurrencies, NFTs, you name it, and trying to neatly put them into the boxes that the US financial regulatory framework has been set up for. As you can imagine, that's a little tough. Never fear, we have government regulators who have recognized this challenge. You may have heard of the Presidential Working Group. They recently put out a report on stablecoins, and there was recently a hearing before the Senate Banking Committee, maybe just a few weeks ago, where they talked about that report. In that report, they said that what they would recommend is that the US House of Representatives get involved and come up with legislation. Now, I'm from DC. and I love politics, and I'm a bit of a political, but I'm sure you guys understand how hard it will be to get the US House of Representatives all aligned on legislation in this area. So we have our work cut out for us, because until we have rules and regulations and things that sort of give us guidance and a framework, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for consumers and investors to feel comfortable in this space. We all know that it's not all bad actors. We all know that it's not all money laundering, and a lot of the skepticism is possibly unwarranted. But without guidance and without a framework, it becomes very, very, very difficult. The good news is that you may have heard in the news is that the Biden administration is coming out with an executive order, possibly as soon as next week. It's long overdue, and there's been a bit of a delay, but it is supposedly coming out any day now, which is pretty exciting. That should give federal agencies more guidance in terms of how they can work together, hopefully, and collaborate and come up with ways so that companies will feel safe and less at risk in innovation.
And Rachel, I want to bring you in here a little bit because so an executive order sounds good to some people, but I think a lot of folks are taking their cues from other folks in the crypto community where they're not sure, is regulation good? Is this regulation good? What do we want? And so what sort of framework can we use for assessing the quality of regulations that are coming within the US?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's a great question. I think regulation is good. We need clarity and we need some certainty. Without that, why would innovators want to build here? Why wouldn't entrepreneurs go elsewhere? I mean, we see it's happening. We need to make this a friendly environment, and that means education, and briefings with whether it's federal agencies or even on the state level. So, with IO, we've been working, in the U.S. at a state level primarily, at this point, very closely with the Wyoming state legislator and helping lead the effort to create 20 plus new laws with the recognition of DAOs, helping with crypto companies getting breaking regulations that will allow for crypto organizations to get bank accounts and access to capital, and a wide array of things, and just educational aspects, and working with the University of Wyoming to help with standards and the research-driven data. And then, that all will lead to data-driven policy making, which is hopefully the most effective and, the way we're going to really grade the quality of what's being drafted by our government.
Well, and then IOHK is also working with East African governments. You guys have memoranda of understanding with several. So I'm wondering what the different experience has been outside of the U.S. Because, of course, we're talking in Denver, we're talking in the U.S., and Decrypt is a U.S.-centric institution, but I think it's important to realize that there is a lot of stuff happening outside of the borders.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for Sunayna to be here, to have the Fed involved at this level with all these amazing, companies, innovators, builders. But, a lot of companies in this space are, very US-centric, and we do need to look at, what's happening. This is a global technology. Nodes are hosted everywhere, miners are, so we need to think, on a worldwide global scale, and that's, looking outside of the US, looking at countries like in, African governments where, they don't have the legacy systems in place or the basic foundations. Americans take for granted the record keeping that we have. How easy it is for me to call my alma mater, and yes, it's frustrating, annoying, and it takes forever, but it's still my transcript exists. It is there. I can access it. I don't have to worry about black swan events, war, anything, a pandemic that's going to ruin that. That is really lacking in a lot of African countries, and the governments realize that, and they really want to use technology to solve social problems and help empower their people to integrate into society. So they're working with IOHK and IO Global, utilizing blockchain technology. So Ethiopia, we've been working with for about 4 years. We've already implemented our smaller program, which is working with about 5 million high school age students, onboarding them onto the blockchain, getting their digital identity, and working with all of the schools. And through the Ministry of Education, I just like to take a step back and just make sure everyone understands, working with the government doesn't mean working with all of the government, right? You can have relationships with the Federal Reserve, with FinHub, or with, in our case in Ethiopia, with the Ministry of Education. it's not about the politics, it's about the work being done, and how can we empower citizens to be less dependent on their governments and in more control of their data, their identities, so they can really help grow their own economies and build really cool things. So we have this digital identity academic credentialing program starting in Ethiopia. Hopefully we'll use that same tech stack to expand to all students. That's a 20 million plus, and then eventually to all citizens in Ethiopia. This will combat issues that Ethiopians suffer, which is fake transcripts and degrees, loss of actual data from institutes, and any conflict and wars that break out, and the difficulties they deal with. So in some ways it's easier working with foreign governments that don't have those legacy systems in place, where they're just trying to rely on that just to get by, where they're just really just want to leapfrog to the front and have that motivation, whereas in the US and other Western countries can be a lot more difficult to get things done, as we know.
And I think that raises a really important point that Rachel sort of raised. I think that there's been a lot of concern expressed about China and the fact that they have their own central currency that they've leashed out. And is the U.S. going to do something similar? And are we going to stay in the forefront as far as our financial system? And obviously, Sunayna can talk more to that. But I think that is a real and legitimate concern. We definitely want financial stability. We definitely, as Rachel mentioned, we do need rules, we do need regulations, but we also need to keep pushing forward and making sure that we are thinking outside the box as far as how we apply these rules into the entities and the types of possible digital assets and other initiatives that are coming out right now. It's a really exciting time, and obviously this is very scary. We remember in the 60s when the first ATM machine came out and what a success that is. I mean, what would we be without our ATM machines? But we also remember in 2008 when mortgage-backed securities kind of took us down a bit with the big bad recession. So there's innovation can be obviously very, very good, and we just have to kind of approach it and get it right.
Well, Sunayna, before this we had talked a little bit about how the dollar has a good product market fit. It has the ultimate product market fit. But we're talking about blockchains and decentralized applications that do more than finance. So when you're looking at digital currencies from the aspect of the Federal Reserve, what sort of ways are you looking at beyond CBDCs and saying that's something where government has a value add?
Everything I've done in the private sector side was always anchored in kind of the mission of how do we take up-and-coming technologies, whether it was fintech or crypto, and really break down barriers that still persist in financial systems, right? So frankly, that was the hook and that same mission-oriented ethos of the Fed that finally, pulled me into the Fed rabbit hole after I was like, wait, you don't want me? What am I going to do with the Fed? So kind of just like that really was the common denominator. And I think whether it's CBDC, whether it's the manifestation in other ways, given the innovation that's already happening in the private space, right? If for those of you that haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to take a look at the CBDC discussion doc that was recently dropped. And in it, the perspective that the Fed really tries to bring to it is, number one, there is a wholesale recognition that there is a massive digitization and decentralization of financial systems, right? It's not a matter of if or when, it's happening right now, right? Whether that's in the United States, whether that's globally, and in my past life, I had the opportunity to work in China, in India, and to your point, like watching them leapfrog, and sometimes we forget, they're actually kind of running farther and faster than us, right? So that change is already happening. The second thing that's important to think about is really from that customer lens, right? Which is the end consumer is going to gravitate towards experiences and products that are as frictionless as possible, right? So if the up and coming innovations are going to offer a pathway for them to accomplish what they're trying to do that's simpler, faster, easier, cheaper, they're going to gravitate to that, whether the regulators have caught on or haven't caught on, right? And we have to be appreciative of that. And I was sharing with Jeff, I'm no smarty pants policymaker. I'm still a product owner at heart. And the way I really think about why we should be leaning in and trying to figure out where is the future of money and payments and everything going is a simple heuristic, right? If you think about it, money in some ways is the ultimate consumer-facing product. Everybody in the world has a relationship with money, analog, digital, DeFi, anything, right? But we all have a relationship. In some ways, you could argue today, the US dollar does maintain a pretty enviable product market fit, right? Having said that, if you're the product owner, and there's many in the room here, builders, if you're the builder of a product that has attained that enviable product market fit, you don't get to rest on your laurels. You actually want to have a healthy sense of paranoia about you better be leveling up your product before somebody comes and disrupts it, right? So for all of those reasons, it behooves us as the incumbent to be looking at what work is happening. Now, as part of the CBDC discussion doc, and I recognize the word humility isn't always associated with the Federal Reserve, but I hope that you will see in the discussion doc, and there's a reason we want, it is called a discussion doc, because yes, there are perspectives that are put forward from the Fed side, but for those of you who have read it, it also has like over 30 questions that we're posing, because it comes from a sense of humility to say, this is a nascent ecosystem, an ecosystem that also continues to shape shift. We're not going to pretend like we've got it all figured out. We are learning. These are the questions that we're grappling with, and we want to interrogate those questions in partnership with the industry that is closest to the technology and the building that's happening, right? So this is where I would encourage, if you haven't already, to consider participating in the open comment period, because the one thing about the Fed that is staffed with researchers is they will read every public comment that comes in, and we do want to present a diversity of perspectives as we think about, this important innovation, so.
Right, and switching gears a little bit, Rachel, you had mentioned some other use cases, and I'm wondering, maybe Robin can also speak to this. A lot of those use cases are coming from outside of the U.S. You were talking about transcripts and whatnot being put on blockchain. So, Robin, when you're dealing with innovators, what sort of things need to be cleared up for some of those non-financial use cases, or are we still seeing those? Are you still seeing those use cases come up?
Yeah, I think that there are some obvious examples in the U.S. in the cryptocurrency community where people are really engaging and working closely with the government on pretty innovative ideas. You all may have heard of the OCC's national bank charters. A number of companies like Paxos, Anchorage, Protego have all been approved for those licenses. I know Rachel mentioned Wyoming. Wyoming has issued to Avanti and Kraken a number of licenses, making them special. I can't remember what the term is. Special.
Yeah,
Special institutions.
Yeah, special banking. Yeah.
and that's been great. And Circle has also applied. So there's a number of examples here in the U.S. where people are really trying to color within the lines and trying to be certified and licensed under the U.S. federal regulatory system. And that then sort of alleviates some of the burdens if they go the national federal route of the state and local rules, which you all probably have heard about, the patchwork quilt of state regulations in this space. So I think that what we need is more certainty and more clarity around what are the expectations of the entities operating in this space. And I'm really happy when I read the report that there were so many questions that the government posed to the industry, because on some levels, these sandboxes, these policy runs, these testimony, these hearings, these are really, really, really important. And the more of us that get involved and help with that dialogue by explaining what it is that we actually do here, and make that clear so that the government can understand, so that they can better provide oversight and regulation, the better off we all will be. We're in this together. And, I can't stress enough that, I would pay attention to all the things that the folks on this panel have said, read these reports, go to these testimonies, listen to these hearings, get involved, respond to these questions, because they need to hear from us. They need to hear from, all of us in this audience in order to make the system safer and better, which is all something we want. And I think I started off at the top of the hour talking about, my passion for financial inclusion. In the wake of the George Floyd's murder and the current pandemic that we live in, I mean, there's no better way to get involved than helping to bring to widen the inequalities in this country and to change the whole game with respect to underserved populations than to get involved in these discussions and play a role with the government in making the whole system better.
Just wanted to add one thing, talking about product market fit of the dollar. I think, it makes me think of just, we have never encountered something as novel as crypto and what it can do. The code can just be empowered and encoded to do so many things, and at once, store value means a payment, represent title, all together. And when we're encountering something as new as that, and looking at what our legacy regulatory framework is, it's not fit for purpose, right? We're talking about, if we're gonna really talk like developers and engineers, it's just not fit for purpose. So what I loved about the Fed paper is that it is kind of they're making themselves aware in a humble way, like we know we need to know more, and we want to get more understanding, more information, more views across the industry and across the board. And so let's try to create some legislation and work with the regulators to find something that's going to really be fit for purpose, so we can do everything that Robin mentioned, and really are empowered as a country to do so.
Lots of quotes on that panel there. The dollar has good product market fit is spinning around in my head. We have time for one question. Anyone have a quick one for this amazing panel?
Hi, that was fantastic. As a builder in the space, especially working in stablecoin field, especially in products such as exchanges, I know builders are afraid of the regulatory boogeyman right now. And getting raided or shut down. What would you say is a good guideline or checklist to make sure a good intentioned builder don't run afoul of the federal government and current regulations?
I guess it's mine. I mean, it's hard to have a checklist. Like I said, we are unfortunately in a lot of gray right now and uncertainty. I would definitely consult with outside legal counsel.
Talk to her.
Sorry, had to make a plug. But I think that I would definitely try and look at the decisions that you're seeing. Unfortunately, the enforcement actions in a lot of the settlement agreements that are coming out right now are the roadmap for what is considered the appropriate, sort of conduct of, institutions in this space. Obviously leading by, regulation by enforcement is not ideal, but until we have the Congress and we have the federal agencies up and running around this space, those are going to be the only tea leaves that are available really to read in this area that can tell you the watch outs. Wish I had a better answer, but that's where we are.
I'll add a little more. Besides just, number one, talk to a lawyer. My next thing would be get more involved, right? So there are a plethora of trade associations. I think, Blockchain Association, Digital Chamber of Commerce, I think they're all here. There's so many more that, are geared towards, proof of stake issues or DeFi issues or this or that. A lot of them offer, I think free membership for developers and things like that. That's a great avenue to learn more, to see what the problems are, and kind of even have your 2 cents in to try to help develop that the right way and get your voice heard.
Let's hear it.